So
Yes.
what I'm going to present, and after seeing excellent work from my colleagues in Bogota, and a really interesting presentation from Henrik, I hope that this keeps your interest. But it is what I'm going to show you is about work that we've done in the last 4 years um, on a cycle master plan for the city of Ankara in Turkey. So um, I'm based in Dublin. I'm actually Portuguese originally, but I'm based in Dublin. I've been here for 24 years. And you may be wondering why was someone from Dublin doing a cycle master plan in Ankara? Is that we work across Europe, and we provided the technical support to our office in Istanbul on this work that was very similar to the work that our colleagues have done in the Cali municipalities, was also funded by a program from the UK. So there's a lot of similarities in there. So first of all, no, that one is the one that's working. First of all, the project was very based on the concept of social gender equality and social uh, inclusion. We were asked to look into cycling in the context of existing social exclusion and inequality, gender inequality. Now, in a country like Turkey, that was a particular issue, especially the gender inequality, and they really wanted to address those issues. So, and what is social exclusion and gender inequality, and why are they important in the context of transport? Because obviously it's a complex issue. There are causes and consequences of poverty, insecurity, and conflict, and the lack of mobility alternatives. So a poor transport network compounds social inclusion, exclusion issues, especially in urban environments. So that is something that we thought, how can we think of a master plan that will improve the situation, particularly in Ankara? And that became quite interesting, and it actually generated a lot of discussion within the team on what should be an equal and inclusive network. And I'll get onto a couple of aspects after this. So a diverse and accessible multimodal transport network is essential. Is essential because diversity and accessibility mean that it accesses everybody, that it benefits everybody, or this benefits everybody if it's a poor network. But once it's poor, the differences between those that are disadvantaged and the ones that are not are even bigger, because it's all to do with access to employment opportunities, education opportunities, um, and then specifically to do with cycling, is that cycling can be seen, if nothing else, and Henrik was very clear in saying that it's also a healthy and useful mode of transport, but it's also an inexpensive mode of transport compared to public transport or owning an own car. So we have made a conscious effort to involve the underrepresented groups, and that includes age extremes, like children and elderly, women, but also migrants. Ankara at this stage has a big, and over the last few years that we've been working there, a big Syrian community that is refugees from Syria, from the war over there, that are slightly on the side of society. And we were asked to consider all groups. It's not just about males, females, and so on. So a conscious effort through the project, and this framed the master plan. What did they ask us to do specifically? So the objective is really to encourage cycling as a mode of urban mobility for all. Okay, so the sentence says it all, um, and integrate it into an existing multimodal transport system. It's a big city with an operational multimodal transport system. Um, and we were asked to do a cycle master plan, identify and design a pilot scheme, and then we actually came up with something from our own initiative to develop a methodology and design for implementation of cycle parking. So that was more because of the pandemic. When the pandemic hit, that we actually saved money by not having as many trips there as we had envisaged. So we had some money, and instead of just saying, okay, let's make better profit on this, which is not what we want, say how can we use that money to improve our deliverables and improve the situation there. So we did the implementation of cycle parking and the framework for advocacy and promotion of cycling among the citizens. We came up with a vision. It's really important to have a vision, to have this agreed from the start. And we proposed to the city authorities that the vision should be that Ankara is recognized as a city where cycling is an integrated mode of daily urban mobility for all and for all motives. Why do we say daily? Is because cycling is perceived in Turkey as being a leisure activity. So a bicycle is something a kid gets at Christmas. Not at Christmas over there, but gets in their birthday. We wanted to change that perception, and that cycling is actually a commuting mode, and that's really important in order to develop in actually making a difference into mode share, into mode split. Just a quick context about Ankara. Not everybody would be familiar with it. It's the capital of Turkey, not the largest city. Istanbul is the largest city, but it's still 5.5 million people, so it's quite large. It's very diverse. It has middle upper income areas, quite wealthy areas, but a lot of informal settlements with poor people. And this is really important. The informal settlements tend to be in the hilliest parts, in the ones that are less accessible by cycling, for example, and that created a problem. The city grew really fast over the last few decades, and it grew as a car-dependent city. There is an obvious element of social exclusion that is linked to lack of mobility. So there are neighborhoods that are very poorly accessed, and people there have very few opportunities to actually leave the neighborhood, and that is particularly the case with elderly and women. So that was something we wanted to look at. This is just an image of Ankara. It's not only a very big city, but it's very sprawling as well, and it's in a valley with areas. Can you see my cursor? So areas around the city center which are very hilly, and the bottom area tends to be less hilly and a bit more affluent. And the areas along around, making a kind of an inverted C around the city center, are areas with kind of the lower socioeconomic indicators. But it's a very large city with some constraints that we're not used to. For example, this central area here is an area which is out of bounds for development, even though it's one of the most accessible areas, because it's the legacy area for Ataturk, the founder of the Republic of Turkey, and it's a legacy that cannot be touched. So it's not even as a park. So it's kind of strange, and it's not as something that we're used to see in cities and the way they're organized. So those were constraints, and what we had to do was actually get a really good basis, a really good gathering of knowledge for the city. So we did demographic, social, economic, cultural aspects. Everything was gathered in. One of the things we did was gather topography. So you see there on the circle on the right, that is a GIS analysis of gradients. So every link with a gradient above, I think we decided that we were going to do a gradient over 15%, 15%, sorry, 1 in 15, which is about 8%. That we were going to identify that as not being suitable for cycling. So to identify areas and links that would probably be out of the equation. We did the demographics, so where people live, what are the socioeconomic characteristics of the area, where are the points of employment. We mapped all of this out, and we did quite significant analysis. And we looked specifically into the GESI being gender equality and social inclusion. What would be the desire lines? And what we thought is areas that are socioeconomically poorer and connections to employment opportunities, connections to education and health opportunities. So we mapped them out. And we mapped out, in terms of access to employment, we mapped out as well access to public transport. So Ankara has a very good, actually, metro system with frequent and high quality metro. And we thought that because of the expanse of the city, that access to public transport would be a specific issue that we'd need to look at. One of the things we looked at, and it's interesting that I was looking at Enric's diagram about the cycling and how cycling fits into a day, and I was thinking of my diagram here, where how do we integrate cycling with public transport? What are the elements we need to look at? And really what this is someone can have a bicycle at home. If there's good neighborhood infrastructure and good connectivity to a public transport node, say a metro station, and there is high quality cycle parking, secure, safe, well accessed, plentiful cycle parking at a metro station, for example, then people can use the public transport and they don't need to bring their bike. But then when they get to the other destination, they may not be close to their point of employment. So for example, in employment areas such as the city center, you could then implement bike sharing schemes so that people can do a cycle, public transport, cycle type of commute. And the same way coming back home, they own a bike, but they don't need to cycle 18 kilometers to get to the center. So we started looking into these neighborhoods that we call mini Hollands, and we said, okay, let's see, can we develop the neighborhood into somewhere where people will be able to cycle locally to promote those opportunities associated with local employment, local facilities, local retail, especially for women who don't work, that can go and do the connected trip, that is dropping the kids to school, going to the shopping, go back home, come back again, and do all of this with a bicycle, and at the same time allow for people who are employed in the city center to access a public transport node and travel to the public transport node, knowing that down the line they would have, if they need, a bike sharing scheme that will allow them to come to the center, to their point of employment within the center. So what did a master plan actually, what was it based on? And this idea we developed was that it's a three-legged stool. So it actually doesn't stand without one of these legs. It needs the three to stand up. And what are the three? Awareness. By awareness, we mean that people need to understand that the bicycle and cycling is a mode of transport that they can use. It's not a leisure activity. It's a mode of transport. This is a photo of the Dutch Prime Minister, who is a very, open supporter of cycling, and he's seen regularly cycling to and from important events and so on. That's really important. It's providing, we wanted to tell the authorities that they need to take the initiative. They need to raise the visibility of cycling in Ankara. The other one would be better cycling infrastructure. That's the one that everybody would think straight away. So that's one of the legs of the stool that everybody would say, okay, we need infrastructure. But infrastructure without people using it is useless. In fact, it goes against the purpose, because whoever's against that, whoever thinks there's too much money being spent on it or something like that, will pick on the fact it's not being properly used. So that needs to work with the awareness of cycling and encouragement, but also access to bicycles. In some places, and particularly in Ankara, even buying a bicycle is beyond the means of population, especially the population that we're saying that this could be a good alternative for them. So we have to have a governance and a type of incentives that will include subsidies to the purchase of bicycles, but also access to bicycle is not just for people to own bicycles. It's what I was saying before. It's access to a bicycle where you need the bicycle. So a bike sharing scheme covers needs such as the ones I suggested that would also need to be considered. So the image there is from Dublin Bikes here where I live, where I work, and it's a very successful scheme, and everybody uses Dublin Bikes in the city centre and all of that. And it's a very cheap way of moving around. And this encourages the awareness, because if you have people cycling, it becomes commonplace. Drivers will learn how to deal with cyclists and so on. So all of these work together. If there is only access to bicycles but no infrastructure, it won't work. If there's no awareness, it doesn't work. So this was really the main point of the master plan, the main focus of the master plan, the development of a cycling culture. So what is a cycling culture? Cycling culture is something that we see in Denmark, we see in the Netherlands. It comes naturally. It's not something that comes. It's nothing new. You know, it's something that is trivial. The development of that, it takes time, but it needs a number of measures, including a master plan that sets out some of the schemes and regulations and policy that need to lead to that. Training and awareness for the population, especially young kids, women, just ensuring that people know how to drive, cycle, ride a bicycle, people know where the infrastructure is, how to use it. And then implementing high quality cycle infrastructure. And I stress the high quality element of this. What I've seen in the presentation from my colleagues for Cali, I am really impressed. I think it's excellent what is being proposed, but that's not just a credit to my colleagues. That's a credit to the authorities. It's a credit to the authorities to believe that it is important to really invest in quality. I have to say that we struggled with that element in Ankara. We struggled with that where there was a drive towards the easy picking. There was a drive towards the let's do as many kilometers as we want. If we can't have a 3 meter wide facility, let's have a 2 meter wide facility, 2A, and that will do. And we were saying, no, that won't do. And we were saying, it doesn't matter the kilometers, it's the junction. What do you do with the junction? How do cyclists cross that junction? That's where you need to invest your attention, your money. You need to get rid of car parking. You need to break eggs to make the omelette. And that was difficult. That was very difficult. And I am really happy to see the proposals for Cali and the quality that is associated with them. So there are there's the image there on the here of the near the sea. That's actually near where I live here in Dublin, where the authority went ahead without actually asking a lot of questions, knowing that this was going to be a good thing. It was, big discussion about it. You can't do this, and now it's one of the best used cycleways in the whole of Dublin, and it's a beautiful cycleway along the sea, very well used by commuters, very well used by leisure users. So sometimes you need to be bold and just go ahead, and it's rather than asking for permission, ask for forgiveness afterwards, but have it done. We, as I said, we also developed then a pilot project. So this was part of our commission, and we were very happy to do it because it's great to be able to bring concepts into reality. So the pilot scheme went into a lot of discussion. a lot of discussion. This is where politics actually entered strongly, because we had this idea that we were going to do something in the area which is to the west here, Xinjiang, where the Jesse indicators would say this is where we should really be doing it, because it's one of the few areas that is deprived, but it's also relatively flat, and it has a lot of employment in the periphery. So if we would connect employment with the metro, it's also the metro goes as far as there, that would tick all the boxes. And this is where politics came along very, very strongly, where there was there was a drive towards that, the area that ended up being chosen for political reasons rather than anything else. We need to be prepared to obviously work with the circumstances, and we still wanted to look at something. So we within this area we chose, within the general area, Vatican, we chose this, which would tick some of the boxes. So what we did was we had over 70 routes, 70 links, and all those 70 links were ranked on a multi-criteria assessment that included gender equality and social inclusion aspects. And this one scored highly on those, even though it wasn't the highest scoring overall. This one scored highly. So what you see there in yellow is the route that we have developed and designed, and it was implemented. However, it was out of our hands, and it was implemented not in accordance to what we had designed, which is something that we're very sad about, especially because they had limited money and the kilometers were the most important. So they have done links but not addressed junctions. So in effect, you're encouraging people to actually cross roads in an unsafe way. And we're talking to the authorities there just to make sure that those things get rectified. And we want to say we've designed something that is good. You didn't implement it as that, and I think that's a really important thing to do. If you have a good design, just use it. Just do it as much as possible. No, and don't do your own thing. It's really important to address the quality, because if it's not good quality, people won't use it, and then it's a vicious circle, and it will be a white elephant. So the part of the pilot project, we decided, as I said before, to develop a methodology. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to develop a methodology to assist the authorities in Ankara to decide how to identify where and how many cycle parking spaces they would need at different locations. So we've done that methodology. So it has to do with use, it has to do with a type of use, it has to do with accessibility as well, and potential for cycling. But then what we did as well was we engaged our architecture colleagues in Milan to actually develop a bespoke Ankara style cycle stand and cycle parking, modular cycle parking. So what you see there is product design, but it's product design that says, okay, this is Ankara. There will be other cities using the Ankara cycle stand, but it will always be Ankara. And we thought of things, for example, when you're parking your bike, sometimes you need somewhere to put your keys, or say you've gone to Starbucks and got a coffee, and you have a coffee and you need somewhere to put it, and that's something that people miss. And so we have this kind of little table on top of the steel frame, a wooden or composite table there. We looked into how to park cargo bikes, the Copenhagen bikes with a box, where that more and more used, for example, in Dublin, and we believe will be used in the future. We looked into, is there specific needs for, say, e-scooters and so on. So we considered all of that, and we developed a product. We developed a product that could be implemented and should be implemented throughout. We contacted people, local manufacturers, to ensure that this could be done. And we're hoping that the city of Ankara takes this and develops it. And I think it's really important from the point of view of ownership. The fact that they have a bespoke, customized system for parking that is different from what you'd find in Istanbul or in London or in Dublin or in Bogota or in Cali is really important. It's the Ankara style. The color was chosen, the fact that they could put in a logo if they want to for the municipality, all of that can become part of the pride in the system. We think that's extremely important. So that concludes, and I am very happy to take questions and go back to any of these things that I may have touched on.
Thank you very much, Tiago. Muchas gracias. Entonces, ahora, gracias. Ahora lo abrimos. No sé si alguna pregunta que alguien de los municipios tenga en este momento respecto a esa experiencia. Creo que particular. Bueno, sí, Andrés. Adelante, por favor, Andrés.
Gracias, Jean-Pierre. Gracias, Alex. Thank you, Tiago. I'm going to talk to you in English, so it's going to be better for you to understand. When you show us the experience from the Prime Minister, I don't know if it was from the Dutch Chancellor or Prime Minister, for us, if I could say for the local level, it's very important to get, like the political will. If we don't have this political will, it's very hard for us, like the technicians, like the planning directors, to implement these pilot projects. Even though we have the idea, or even how we have the project. So could you tell us a little bit more about how was the political involvement? How did you get, because you have a prime minister, which is the main character at the political level, but at the local level, we have, the councils, we have the mayors, we have the future mayors, and we have local campaigns. And to tell you a little bit more, we could put this project on this development plan, but at the next level, we have to put this in the political agenda. If we don't have this in the political agenda, then you don't have this connection between what is the development plan and what is the political goals. And sometimes at the political level, as you mentioned, all the employment, all the housing, all the transportation, all the climate change, but we also need this political will to say, yes, I can provide this budget, whatever money it is, but how could you elaborate a little bit more in Ankara? I visit and I know a little bit. So how do you get this involvement at the political level? Just to share your opinion.
Yeah, so there was one thing is shaded the whole thing, which is the fact that the money was being invested by the Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office from the United Kingdom. So it was the Prosperity Fund, Global Cities Prosperity Fund. They were putting the money in, but they weren't the beneficiaries. They were the sponsors. The city in itself is very divided. What happens is, and if you're familiar with the situation, the political situation in Turkey, is that there is one party in government which tends to be more conservative and appealing a lot to the more working class and so on, which actually dominates 8 out of the 9 districts in Ankara. But the mayor is elected by the largest district, which is over 1 million people, and is actually overall is elected. So there is one district that happens to be the more affluent district in general. That happens to be where all the government, all the embassies, everything is there. but that district is dominated by the opposition party. So the politics that I mentioned came about when the district that they wanted the investment to be put in immediately is one that is borderline, that was about to be gained by the opposition party, actually the city. So the city were kind of happy to do that, because they would just tip it over the line and win that district's favors, rather than investing in a district which is staunchly for the government party. So that was like politics at its best, in saying, okay, no, not there, because we're never going to get those people to vote for us. But here, we're borderline. In the last elections, there were only 2 or 3% difference. Let's push it over the line here by focusing on that district. Now, we weren't happy with that, not because we are taking political views, but because we were, in the technical point of view, we were saying that's not where our analysis tells us we should invest. So that's one thing. The other thing is that the silo type of setup within the AMM, which is Ankara Metropolitan Municipality. AMM, for example, the mayor had announced that there was going to be 50 kilometers of cycle facilities implemented by 2022. Okay, and they were adamant that they had to do it. So at the same time as we were doing a master plan, the mayor asked one of their departments, which is a department set up to run the buses, they asked that department to develop schemes and implement. So during the period of a year and a half, nearly 2 years of where we were working on this, new routes appeared in the city center that we weren't even aware of. And that was like, from within the city, they just completely undermined us in providing routes that are not of the quality that we were aspiring to. And again, this had to do with politics. This had to do with the mayor wanting to show that he's very pro cycling, and wanting to follow up on a promise that he had done to the electorate. So all of these things are difficult to manage. Like, we had to stay our course. We had to be clear in saying those routes, those facilities that were presented, that were implemented, they're not our routes. They are not. We didn't implement them. We didn't choose their route. Some of them overlapped, but it's very difficult in terms of the population for them to understand that, because they look the same. Unfortunately, they will look quite the same, because the one we designed, they implemented not with the quality we wanted. So I think that even when you have just one organization looking after it, even then, it's really important to collaborate. It's really important to have everybody on board, to everybody rows in the same direction, does the same thing. And I'm sure you recognize these kind of challenges that I'm going through. I hope it answers the question.
Thank you so much, Tiago. Yes, indeed, I follow you up. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Bueno, en este punto no sé si haya alguien más. Creo que, Tiago, ha sido muy relevante lo que nos has contado del plan maestro, y en particular destaco toda la incorporación de esa metodología GESI que tiene que ver con género, la inclusión social, y creo que para los diferentes municipios, también para, digamos, toda la formulación y la continuidad de los planes que ustedes tienen en los diferentes municipios. Cali, por ejemplo, también toda la incorporación de cómo realmente cubrir esas zonas más vulnerables o que tienen desventajas económicas, pues realmente pareciera que es un enunciado muy sencillo, muy obvio, pero que al final del día sí puede empezar a darnos luces a cómo esas poblaciones, de alguna manera, si no tenemos grandes sistemas o grandes infraestructuras, pues sí a través de la infraestructura para las bicicletas pueden empezar a vincularse esas poblaciones, ¿no? Y sobre todo pensando hacia futuro, ¿no? Porque seguramente lo que viene es que seguramente va a haber más congestión, más vehículos, pues también la implementación de sistemas de transporte se vuelve
Alex,
también compleja.
Alex,
Adelante.
there's one thing that I would like to mention, if you don't mind, which is at one point we were very focused on the gender equality, social inclusion. We were focused on areas, on poorer areas, okay? But then we had the issue that we mentioned before, is that some of the poorer areas were actually not suitable to implement good quality cycling. But also, then there was a discussion about when you go from zero, there were 167 people that cycled to work regularly or school regularly in a population of 5.5 million. 167. Okay. When you start from so low, maybe, and this goes against saying, okay, let's focus on the poorer areas. Those are the ones that really need it. But maybe what you need to do is focus on areas that where there is already a bit of a demand, which may actually be some middle class areas. And it may be connections where of settled employment, residential. And we looked, for example, into universities. We looked into connections to universities because you established the use. Those were all considerations we had. I mean, we spent a lot of time discussing what is this of creating a cycle culture and how do you do it? How do you get the ball rolling? And maybe you don't get the ball rolling by focusing on the poorer areas, because the stigma will persist and be crystallized of, if you ride a bicycle, you must be poor. So in a way, the ball rolling maybe needs to start in a different way, where you capture a demand, an initial demand, and you bring other sectors of population along. And it may sound not as politically correct as we would like to, in that more strict way of looking into equality and social inclusion. But actually, it may be when you start from very, very scratch. I think that may be one thing to consider. And I'm not as familiar with Cali as I am now with Ankara, where I would be with Lisbon or Dublin. I do think that debate needs to be had. And sometimes we're going to make decisions that don't appear to be the right ones from that particular lens.
Okay, thanks, Tiago, for that clarification.